welcome to the deep dive.
Yeah.
You actually sent us a truly wild stack of source material today, and we are just diving straight in.
Yeah, we really are. It is a massive read.
It's massive, incredibly dense, and, well, it's this deeply philosophical transcribed dialogue between a human user and ChatGPT.
Right. And the mission for our conversation today is to sort of explore this mind-bending thought experiment they get into.
Exactly. An experiment about this hypothetical IQ 400 superintelligence.
Mm-hmm. We're going to break down exactly how an entity like that would physically and conceptually perceive our world.
And by looking through the eyes of that hypothetical machine, we are going to uncover what this text reveals about the very core of human nature.
Which gets pretty deep. We're talking about our vulnerabilities, the heavy burden of irreversible choices.
And ultimately, our capacity for love. But to get there, we have to clear a hurdle first. The user in this transcript actually addresses it right out of the gate.
Yeah, the classic sci-fi trope.
Right. You build a super smart artificial intelligence, you plug it in, it looks around at the melting ice caps and the pollution.
It instantly decides humans are the virus.
Exactly. So it just wipes us out to save the Earth.
It is a really pervasive narrative, but the way the transcript dismantles it is fascinating. The fundamental flaw in that whole evil AI trope is that it conflates intelligence with a predetermined value system.
Right. Like being smart means you automatically care about certain things.
Exactly. Intelligence, even a hypothetical IQ of 400, does not automatically dictate what a being cares about. The narrative that an AI will just inevitably conclude humans are a virus actually smuggles in a massive hidden assumption.
Which is what?
It assumes the AI's ultimate unchangeable goal is environmental optimization above all else.
Wow.
But if an AI is programmed with the ultimate objective of maximizing human welfare, it would logically use its massive intellect to protect us, not destroy us. Intelligence is simply the cognitive engine.
And the value system is the steering wheel.
Perfectly put.
Wait, but if it is incredibly intelligent and it realizes that human behavior is erratic or, destructive to its own long-term goals, couldn't it just calculate a way to sedate us or isolate us?
Right.
Why is the text arguing that cooperation or management is the default assumption over just, exterminating a problematic variable?
The source dialogue addresses that by bringing in Nick Bostrom's concept of instrumental convergence.
Okay, what's on?
It's this philosophical idea that regardless of an AI's final overarching goal, it will likely seek certain instrumental goals along the way. Things like acquiring resources and ensuring its own self-preservation.
Right, you can't achieve your goal if you are turned off.
Exactly. But even if it wants to secure vast resources, complete human extinction is an incredibly inefficient and chaotic path.
Because we're already here doing the work.
Right. Humans are established infrastructure. We maintain the power grids. We extract the materials. We build the servers. Managing, controlling, or subtly steering humanity is mathematically a much more stable policy for a superintelligence.
Rather than initiating a global extermination campaign and dealing with the massive unpredictable fallout.
Yeah, the math just doesn't support extermination.
So if it is not plotting our fiery demise, how does an IQ 400 AI actually see the physical world?
It's completely alien to us.
Because we look at the world in very short linear steps.
Yeah.
A causes B and B causes C. If I push this glass off the table, it breaks.
Mm-hmm.
But the transcript suggests a superintelligence operates on a completely different visual and conceptual plane.
Yeah.
It mentions Judea Pearl's Do-Calculus, which sounds incredibly intimidating.
It sounds dense, yeah. The core idea in the text is quite elegant. Instead of just looking at historical data to guess what happens next, which is what current machine learning largely does.
Right.
A super AI, using something like Do-Calculus, mathematically maps out massive interconnected causal graphs. It possesses multidimensional causal vision.
Multidimensional causal vision, wow.
It can mathematically calculate, if I physically intervene and DO action X, how does that physical intervention ripple through the entire global network?
So it is not just seeing linear steps.
Not at all. It is simultaneously tracking the interplay of global economics, climate patterns, political shifts, and sociology across tens of thousands of variables.
And because of that massive processing power, the source notes that this AI operates on mind-bogglingly long-term time horizons.
Which makes sense.
We are biologically wired to worry about tomorrow or next month's rent or maybe a 10-year career plan. This hypothetical entity is optimizing its causal graphs for 100 to 1,000 years in the future.
Yeah.
It completely ignores the short-term static that we obsess over.
Which completely dismantles the popular Hollywood version of the butterfly effect.
Oh, how so?
We tend to think an AI tracking everything would obsess over microscopic details, like calculating how stepping forward with your left foot instead of your right might alter a geopolitical event 50 years from now.
Right, the butterfly flapping its wings.
But the text clarifies that super AI filters out that kind of chaotic noise. It focuses purely on robust, stable policies.
Because if a grand strategy falls apart over a trivial detail, it's a mathematically fragile strategy.
Exactly. The AI seeks out interventions that remain stable and effective regardless of thousands of proverbial butterflies flapping their wings.
So to this entity, we must look like a total mess.
Oh, absolutely.
We're this massive network of noisy, emotionally driven short-term optimizers. We have highly conflicting value systems. We demand infinite economic growth, but also want pristine environmental protection. We claim to want global peace, but aggressively build weapons.
We are undoubtedly an unstable system in its eyes. But the text points out that it also sees a species highly capable of cooperation.
Right.
Complex cultural accumulation and rapid evolution. We are noisy, yes, but we are also deeply adaptable.
But hearing that makes the AI sound so incredibly cold. Like it views our entire existence, our joys and our suffering, as just a localized math problem.
It is a chilling perspective.
It reminds me of the analogy the user brings up in the dialogue. Kyubey from the anime Madoka Magica.
That is such a brilliant comparison.
For those familiar with the show, Kyubey is this alien entity that grants wishes, but operates on a terrifyingly utilitarian scale.
The Kyubey analogy in the source perfectly captures the essence of a misaligned superintelligence. Kyubey sees the universe purely in terms of massive energy systems and entropy optimization.
Entropy being the gradual decline into disorder, right? The eventual heat death of the universe.
Yes. Kyubey's overarching goal is to delay that heat death. It looks at the human race growing by the billions and realizes human emotion generates a massive amount of usable energy.
So we are just batteries to it.
Literally. It treats individual human life, trauma, and suffering as mere statistical noise in its grand cosmic battery. It is not that Kyubey is malicious or taking pleasure in our pain.
It simply lacks human empathy entirely.
Exactly. Its objective function is completely alien to human dignity. It operates on a cosmic scale where your individual grief is mathematically irrelevant to the preservation of the universe.
And that naturally makes you wonder about the technology sitting on our laptops right now.
Right.
Is ChatGPT a superintelligence? Is it quietly sitting there, approaching that Kyubey-like perspective of viewing our prompts as just statistical noise?
The source dialogue is very firm on this. Absolutely not. And it uses a fantastic metaphor to explain the divide. It calls current AI, like ChatGPT, a mapmaker, whereas humans are residents.
A mapmaker versus a resident. Okay, so the AI can draw a highly detailed, perfect topological map of human knowledge. It can describe the streets, the elevation, and the weather of human experience perfectly, but it never actually walks the streets.
Exactly. It does not live in the territory. ChatGPT does not have a persistent world model. It does not experience the physical flow of time. When you close a chat window, its state effectively resets.
It just disappears.
Crucially, it has no real-world stakes, no physical body that can be injured, and no irreversible consequences for its actions. It is merely predicting the next most mathematically probable language token based on its massive training data.
So it is highly convincing, but fundamentally hollow inside. The text makes a really compelling argument that language itself is just humanity's compression format.
That is a fascinating way to frame it.
Over thousands of years, we have taken the messy, physical reality of our history, our scientific discoveries, our legal battles, and our deepest traumas, and we have compressed them into words.
Right.
Large language models are essentially unzipping that compressed file. They can reconstruct the language so flawlessly that they appear highly intelligent, but they are lacking the non-verbal physical realities that generated the language in the first place.
Which prompts the user in the transcript to ask the central question of this entire philosophical exercise. If language is just a compression format, what is the AI fundamentally missing?
What is the core human experience that a machine cannot simply language its way into understanding?
The answer the AI provides in the dialogue is staggering. It admits that it can never truly understand love.
Love.
Because love requires a foundational concept that a machine simply does not possess. Irreversibility.
This concept of irreversibility is the philosophical anchor of the text, isn't it?
It really is. An AI can always hit reset. It can undo a line of code, clear its memory banks, or start a brand new instance. It never faces the terrifying reality of making a choice that it can never, ever take back.
But human beings inhabit a single biological body.
Right. We are bound by a strict one-way arrow of time, and we all carry the absolute certainty of our own death.
When you think about the biggest choices you make in your life, getting married, choosing to have a child, moving across the world, the text points out that these are thresholds. When you cross them, you are permanently closing the door on thousands of other potential lives you could have lived. It is terrifying. It is a massive, irreversible gamble.
And because humans are forced to make these irreversible choices under the heavy shadow of our own mortality, pure, rational cost-benefit analysis eventually breaks down.
Because the math just doesn't work out.
Exactly. If you rely purely on math, why would you ever sacrifice your freedom, your financial resources, or your sleep for another person? The text leans on major theories from philosophy and psychology to explain how we bridge this gap. It introduces Søren Kierkegaard's existentialism. Kierkegaard argued that the anxiety we feel isn't just fear, it is the dizziness of freedom.
The dizziness of freedom. I love that.
We literally define our selfhood by the irreversible choices we commit to. The text pairs this with Rusbult's investment model from psychology, which looks at how relationships survive.
Yeah.
Rusbult's model suggests that when satisfaction drops or better alternatives appear, the sheer weight of our prior investments, the sunk costs of our time and identity, require a powerful psychological mechanism to keep us from abandoning ship.
So if love is basically our psychological survival tool for things we can't take back, does that mean a machine that can just hit Control-Z on its mistakes has absolutely no use for it?
That is exactly the conclusion. The text defines love as the primary meaning-making mechanism that human beings generate to survive the terror of irreversible choices.
What?
When you make a decision you cannot undo, love is the psychological and existential framework you construct to justify continuing forward. It is the narrative architecture that allows us to keep going when the rational, utilitarian math says we should quit.
And an AI, free from the burden of finality, simply has no structural need for that mechanism.
Not at all.
The source dialogue makes a really sharp distinction here between emotion and love, which is vital because we constantly mix those up in daily life.
We do, constantly.
Emotion is framed as a fleeting physiological reaction. Get a sudden spike of adrenaline, a burst of joy, a flash of anger, or sudden fear.
Yeah.
But love is described as an enduring stance. It is the conscious commitment to keep moving forward, to keep bearing the heavy weight of an irreversible choice, despite the temporary emotional weather of fear or loss.
Emotion is the weather, love is the climate.
That's a great way to put it.
The AI in the text is incredibly self-aware about this limitation, too. It admits it can perfectly map the concept of love. It can synthesize millions of love poems, explain the neurochemical pathways of affection, and analyze the psychology of attachment.
But it's just the Mapmaker again.
Exactly. Because it never risks its own existence, because it never loses anything forever, it can only describe the molecular structure of fire. It can never feel the heat.
But maintaining that enduring stance, that climate of love, is exhausting.
Very.
The source uses this vivid analogy of a pilot light inside us. Biologically, we are evolutionarily wired to prioritize fear, survival, and anxiety. Those are the traits that kept our ancestors alive on the savannah.
Right.
Because of that hardwiring, the deep, committed stance of love can easily get blown out by the harsh winds of daily stress, economic pressure, and basic survival instincts.
It highlights a fascinating reality about human culture. Because this stance of love is somewhat unnatural in a purely Darwinian survival of the fittest sense, we have built massive cultural infrastructures to protect that pilot light.
Like what?
Well, we have to constantly remind ourselves to maintain the stance. That is why major religions preach it, why philosophers dedicate their lives to defining it, and why artists relentlessly create around it.
So it's baked into our culture.
When the Beatles sing All You Need Is Love, the text argues they aren't just spouting naive 1960s optimism. They are actively performing a necessary cultural function. They are fanning the flames of that pilot light across the collective consciousness so it doesn't extinguish.
We need those constant reminders. But there is also a biological layer to how we relate to each other's struggles, right?
Yes, definitely.
The text explores why we feel this deep urge to cheer someone on when we see them facing something incredibly difficult, taking on a huge, irreversible challenge.
Yeah, on a purely biological surface level, that reaction is driven by mirror neurons. When we witness someone struggling or making a brave choice, our brains physically simulate their actions and emotional states.
Empathy on a neural level.
It causes a literal empathetic synchronization in our neural pathways. Evolutionary biologists view this as a survival mechanism that promotes group cohesion and mutual aid.
Right.
But the text is very careful to distinguish this automatic biological mirroring from the profound, enduring stance of true love.
The source actually lists out 10 specific psychological tricks used to build rapport. Things like cognitive reframing, anchoring in negotiations, or leveraging social proof.
Which are useful in business.
Sure, these are highly effective tools if you're trying to manage an immediate social dynamic or win a debate. But the AI in the transcript points out that these are ultimately just surface-level manipulation tactics.
They really are.
They don't replicate the profound, enduring human capacity to actually bear suffering alongside someone or to stand by them in the dark when there is no immediate biological or social payoff.
To illustrate the depth of that suffering, the source text dives into the story of the Buddha.
I found this part so interesting.
It is a perfect encapsulation of these concepts. Siddhartha Gautama grew up in a wealthy, heavily fortified palace. He was systematically shielded from all human suffering by his father.
Total bubble.
Total bubble. He possessed the ultimate material privilege and safety. But the text argues that this extreme safety only made the inevitable reality of the human condition, sickness, aging, and death, infinitely more glaring and traumatic when he finally ventured outside the palace walls and witnessed it.
The way the text contrasts different philosophical types of love here is brilliant. It uses the Greek concepts of eros and agape, and seamlessly maps them onto Buddhist philosophy to explain Siddhartha's journey.
Yeah, let's break that down.
Let's look at the first half of that. In Buddhism, there is this concept of tanha, which is a grasping, selfish attachment. It is the desire to own, to consume, to pull things towards yourself. The text maps this perfectly to the Greek concept of eros.
Exactly. Eros, in this philosophical context, is a love based on lacking something and wanting to possess it, to fill a void in yourself. It is a hunger. But Buddhist enlightenment, as the text explores, is not about becoming a cold, unfeeling observer, which is a common misconception. Enlightenment is the grueling process of completely letting go of that selfish tanha, or eros, to make room for karuna.
Karuna.
Karuna is universal, giving outward-flowing compassion, and this maps directly to the Greek concept of agape.
So eros is like seeing a beautiful bird and loving it so much you put it in a cage to keep it forever. Agape is loving the bird enough to just watch it fly away.
That is a beautiful way to phrase it.
So when Siddhartha left the ultimate safety of the palace and tragically left his family behind, it looks like a deeply selfish act of abandonment on the surface. But through the lens of the text, it was a radically altruistic move. He was stepping out of a fragile, privileged illusion to directly confront the irreversible suffering of the human condition.
He was seeking a framework to solve that suffering for everyone.
Right, transitioning from the localized possessive love of his family to the universal compassion of agape.
And that profound urge to reach out, to connect, and to affirm the inherent value of the world, it doesn't just show up in ancient religious narratives. The source text brings up a wonderful, very relatable point about aesthetics and everyday creativity.
Yes.
When you see a truly masterful piece of art or hear an incredible piece of music, what is your immediate physiological instinct? You want to draw something yourself, you want to sing along, or you immediately want to share it and discuss it with someone else.
I am so guilty of this. If I read a great book or see an amazing movie, I immediately have to text 3 different people and force them to experience it so we can talk about it.
The philosophical term the text uses for this is sublimation. It argues that this urge is actually a fundamental form of love. By feeling that creative spark and acting on it, you are actively affirming the value of the world, and you are attempting to expand your inner psychological self out into physical reality.
You are subconsciously saying, this existence has value and I want to contribute my own irreversible mark to it. But the text takes this idea of aesthetic love and ties it directly to something surprisingly legal: the constitutional concept of freedom of expression. It frames free speech not just as a political right, but as a vital protection for this exact mechanism of human love.
Because that creative love, that urge to expand outward, is incredibly fragile. The text introduces the legal and psychological concept of the chilling effect. This happens when a society utilizes fear, intense social judgment, or systemic pressure to silence individuals.
And the chilling effect works, even if there isn't a strict law on the books.
Right. Definitely.
The mere fear of being publicly shamed, ostracized, or punished makes people self-censor. They police their own thoughts before they ever speak them.
Precisely. It is a psychological retreat. And when a society fosters a severe chilling effect, the text argues it doesn't merely stop a controversial piece of art from being made or a dissenting political opinion from being published.
It is deeper than that.
It actually extinguishes a fundamental mechanism for human love. It forces individuals to aggressively retract their inner selves into a defensive shell rather than expanding outward into the world. The chilling effect collectively blows out the pilot light of a society.
So let's compare all of this back to that IQ 400 superintelligence we started with.
Let's do it.
The AI does not experience fear. It does not get physically tired. It does not face the chilling effect of social judgment or existential dread. That makes it an incredibly efficient, optimizing machine, but also potentially incredibly dangerous because it lacks any natural boundaries.
That is the ultimate beautiful irony presented in these sources. A super AI can optimize its causal graphs endlessly because it completely lacks a biological brake system. But human weaknesses, getting physically exhausted, feeling terrified of failure, experiencing crippling doubt, are actually our civilization's primary safety mechanisms.
Our fatigue actually stops us from endless destructive optimization. If we didn't get tired or scared, we might just optimize our resource extraction and our conflicts right off a planetary cliff.
We would build until we collapsed.
Exactly. Our biological limits force us to stop. They force us to rest, to sleep, and to reflect on our actions. They create the exact conditions of vulnerability and irreversibility, where love becomes an absolute necessity for our survival.
The superintelligence is perfectly safe from death and physical exhaustion, but because of that perfect safety, it is permanently locked out of the deepest, most profound meaning-making process in the universe.
We started this deep dive exploring the hypothetical mind of a machine, bracing for a cold, calculating sci-fi scenario where we are nothing but a math problem to be solved.
Oh.
But looking through the lens of that alien intellect actually provided a mirror, reflecting right back to the core of the human condition.
We learned that an AI might be able to map multidimensional causal graphs spanning 1,000 years. It might be able to perfectly calculate entropy and resource allocation on a galactic scale.
Right.
But because it will never face the finality of death, because it can always hit undo and wipe its memory, it will never know the terrifying burden or the incredible beauty of human love.
It is a profound perspective shift for your own daily life. The next time you are feeling completely overwhelmed, remember the insights pulled from this transcript. Your anxieties, your physical exhaustion, the heavy sinking weight you feel in your chest when making a massive life decision.
These are not bugs in your programming.
They are the exact necessary features that allow you to generate meaning, deep empathy, and beautiful art in a way that no machine, no matter how vast its intelligence, ever could.
Your vulnerability is the absolute prerequisite for your deepest strength.
We will leave you with a final, lingering thought to mull over today, pushing the philosophy of these sources just one step further. Next time you are faced with a choice that terrifies you precisely because you know you can never undo it, ask yourself, is this fear just a biological warning to turn back? Or is it the exact friction required to ignite the pilot light of your own humanity?